I knew my son was planning to steal my life the moment I saw him exchange that look with his wife over my morning coffee. The same look wolves give each other before they close in on wounded prey. It was a Tuesday morning in October, the kind where frost still clung to the kitchen windows and steam from my Earl Grey created small clouds in the cold air. I'd been awake since 5:30, my usual time, had completed my morning crossword puzzle, and was halfway through the news when I heard Daniel's BMW pull into my driveway, 3 hours earlier than his usual monthly visit. Through the lace curtains my late husband Robert had always complained about, I watched them sit in the car for a full minute, Rebecca's mouth moving rapidly while Daniel nodded, rehearsing. Then I saw it. Cardboard boxes, flat packed and pristine, stacked in their back seat alongside rolls of bubble wrap and packing tape. My stomach dropped like a stone into deep water. The doorbell rang with false cheer. I counted to 10 before answering, arranging my face into the pleased surprise of a lonely mother grateful for company. Daniel, Rebecca, what a wonderful surprise, I said, noting how Rebecca's eyes immediately swept past me to appraise the mahogany grandfather clock in the foyer. Robert's grandfather's clock, worth at least $15,000. Hi, Mom, Daniel said, his embrace lasting 2 seconds longer than usual, his cologne, something expensive and suffocating, making my eyes water. We need to talk. Those 4 words. Every child who's ever planned to betray a parent begins with those 4 words. They settled into my living room like invading generals surveying conquered territory. Rebecca's fingers traced the arm of my Victorian sofa, the one from my mother's estate, while Daniel spread glossy brochures across my coffee table with the practiced efficiency of a used car salesman. Sunset Manor, Golden Years Residence, Peaceful Pines Senior Living, each one featuring silver-haired models with vacant smiles, playing chess in sun-drenched atriums that I knew would smell like industrial disinfectant and forgotten dreams. Mom, we're worried about you, Daniel began, his voice dripping with synthetic concern. Living alone in this big house, at your age. At my age. I'm 73, not dead. I still walk 2 miles every morning, tend to a half-acre garden, and last week I beat my neighbor Harrison, who's 58, at tennis. The stairs, Mom. Rebecca chimed in, her voice pitched high with false worry. What if you fall, and this neighborhood isn't as safe as it used to be? This neighborhood, where I'd raised 2 children, where every neighbor knew my name, where crime consisted of teenagers occasionally toilet papering the Henderson's oak tree, but I nodded, letting my hand tremble slightly as I reached for my tea, a performance worthy of an Oscar. Dr. Morrison says you've been confused lately, Daniel continued, and that's when I tasted it, that metallic tang of pure betrayal flooding my mouth. Dr. Morrison, my physician for 30 years, had told me just last week that I had the blood work of a woman 20 years younger. Daniel must have meant Dr. Morrison, his golf buddy, not Dr. Morrison, the medical professional. Oh? I said, allowing a note of vague confusion to enter my voice. I don't remember. The look that passed between them then, triumph mixed with greed, made my skin crawl like fire ants were marching beneath it. Rebecca actually licked her lips. It's okay, Mom, Daniel said, patting my hand with fingers that felt like cold sausages. We found the perfect place for you. Sunset Manor has an opening. Very rare. Usually there's a 2-year waiting list, but I pulled some strings. Pulled some strings. Paid a bribe, more likely. I knew Sunset Manor. Sarah Chen's family had placed her there last year. She'd lasted 3 months before the neglect and isolation broke her spirit entirely. It has activities, Rebecca added brightly, as if I were a toddler being promised a playground. Bingo on Wednesdays, and they serve meals in a communal dining room so you'll make friends. Friends. As if 7 decades of genuine relationships could be replaced by forced proximity to other abandoned souls. But my house, I said weakly, watching Daniel's pupils dilate with anticipation. We'll take care of everything, he assured me, his hand now gripping mine with possession rather than comfort. Rebecca and I will manage the property, make sure it's maintained. You won't have to worry about a thing. Maintain it. I'd seen their rental property, gutted, modernized, stripped of every ounce of character to maximize profit. My home, where Daniel took his first steps, where his sister Emma learned to play piano, where Robert died in my arms in our bed of 45 years, reduced to square footage and market value. When? I whispered, and Rebecca couldn't quite hide her smile. We thought, this weekend? Daniel said, pretending to hesitate. I know it's fast, but the opening won't last, and we just want you safe. Safe, protected, cared for. Every word a euphemism for controlled, contained, erased. But what Daniel didn't know, as he patted my hand with practiced sympathy, was that I had been preparing for this moment for 3 months, and the house he was so eager to steal, it was already gone. Oh, Daniel, I said, letting my voice quaver like autumn leaves in wind. I suppose, if you think it's best, and watched his shoulders relax with relief that I wasn't going to fight. Rebecca practically vibrated with excitement, her fingers already flying across her phone screen. Texting contractors, no doubt. I caught glimpses of her Pinterest boards over her shoulder. Modern farmhouse kitchen, spa-inspired master bath, open concept living. My home of 47 years reduced to a renovation project before I'd even left it. You're making the right choice, Mom, Daniel said, and then, God help me. He actually squeezed out a tear, one single calculated tear that rolled down his cheek with the timing of a soap opera actor. This is so hard for us, but we just want what's best for you. What's best for me. The phrase stuck in my throat like a fishbone. I shuffled to the bathroom, adding a slight wobble I'd been practicing, and heard Rebecca whisper urgently, the appraiser said we could get $1.2 million if we renovate the kitchen and knock out that wall between the dining room and... Not now, Daniel hissed, but I heard the hunger in his voice, raw and undisguised. Standing at my bathroom sink, I stared at my reflection, clear-eyed, sharp, fully present, and thought about what they'd been doing for months. The previous week, my neighbor Joan had approached me at the mailbox with that careful expression people wear when approaching potentially rabid dogs. Margaret, dear, she'd said slowly, loudly, as if I'd gone deaf along with demented. Daniel told us about your soul condition. We're all so sorry. My condition. Daniel had been laying groundwork like a master criminal, telling anyone who'd listen that I'd been forgetting things, wandering at night, leaving the stove on. Lies that spread through our cul-de-sac like kudzu, choking 40 years of friendships with synthetic concern and whispered pity. Harrison from 2 doors down now waved instead of stopping to chat about his roses. Sarah Martinez, who'd borrowed cups of sugar for 3 decades, crossed the street when she saw me coming. Even the mailman, Jorge, had started speaking to me in that bright, patronizing tone reserved for children and the mentally incompetent. I returned to the living room to find Rebecca measuring my bay window with her phone app, muttering about natural light and street appeal. Such a pretty view, I said vaguely, and she jumped, caught in the act of already claiming my territory. Yes, and it would look amazing with modern treatments. I mean, it's lovely as it is, of course. She recovered poorly, her cheeks flushing the color of overripe strawberries. Daniel stood by my bookshelf, already mentally cataloging first editions, his fingers hovering over Robert's collection of signed Hemingway novels, like a vulture over carrion. Mom, we should probably start packing some essentials today. Just clothes and medications. We'll handle everything else. Handle everything else. Sell, donate, or dump 47 years of memories while I sat in a nursing home, drooling into my afternoon pudding. I'll just need a few things. I agreed, noting how Rebecca's eyes lit up when she spotted my grandmother's silver tea service on the sideboard, the one she'd admired every Thanksgiving for 15 years, the one I'd specifically noted in my will should go to Emma. They followed me upstairs, Rebecca documenting each room with her phone. For inventory purposes, she claimed, while Daniel tested floorboards and examined crown molding with the eye of someone calculating renovation costs down to the penny. In my bedroom, I made a show of confusion about which clothes to pack, while Rebecca not so subtly photographed my jewelry box. Daniel found my financial documents in exactly the drawer he headed for, almost as if he'd searched it before during one of his concerned son visits. Don't worry about any of this paperwork, Mom, he said, sliding my bank statements into his briefcase with practiced ease. I'll manage everything. Manage, control, steal, different words for the same betrayal. As I folded my late husband's cardigan, the green one that still smelled faintly of his pipe tobacco, Daniel's phone rang. I heard him in the hallway. Yes, Dr. Morrison, she's agreed to go. No resistance. Yes, I have the paperwork you prepared stating she's incompetent to make financial decisions. Thursday's perfect for the formal evaluation. Dr. Morrison, not even a real doctor, just Daniel's college roommate with a suspended psychiatric license who now worked as a consultant. The evaluation would be a sham. The papers already signed before I even walked through Sunset Manor's doors. Ready, Mom? Daniel asked, reappearing with my small suitcase, his face arranged in an expression of loving concern that made my stomach turn. As Daniel helped me into his BMW, I clutched my purse containing the only document that mattered. Signed, notarized, and irreversible. My nephew Marcus, the one person they despised more than anyone, was about to become their worst nightmare. 6 months before my son tried to bury me alive in a nursing home, my mother's pearl necklace vanished from my jewelry box on a Thursday afternoon while Daniel fixed my computer problems. I'd gone to retrieve it for Emma's birthday photo. She wanted a portrait wearing 3 generations of family pearls, but found only the velvet impression where it had rested for 20 years. Daniel, helpful as always, suggested I'd misplaced it. You know how you've been lately, Mom, he'd said, his concern so perfectly calibrated that I almost believed him myself. But I hadn't been anything lately except observant. The pearls were just the beginning. Over the next weeks, items disappeared with the steady rhythm of a metronome. My father's gold pocket watch Tuesday, grandmother's Tiffany brooch Friday, the signed first edition of To Kill a Mockingbird that Robert bought me for our anniversary, Sunday. Each time, Daniel had been in my house within 24 hours, helping with groceries, checking my furnace, fixing a leaky faucet, the devoted son always finding reasons to visit. Mom, you really should let me organize your finances, he'd say, eyeing my desk where I kept important papers. It would give you peace of mind. Peace of mind. What he meant was peace of my money. The night I caught him changed everything. February 15th, 2:17 a.m. according to the grandfather clock's chime. I'd woken to use the bathroom and heard the unmistakable sound of my filing cabinet drawer sliding open. The third drawer that always stuck unless you lifted it slightly while pulling. I crept down the hallway, my bare feet silent on carpet I'd walked for decades, and peered through the crack in my office door. There was Daniel, illuminated by his phone's flashlight, photographing my savings bonds, my CD certificates, my investment portfolio statements. His fingers moved through my documents like a thief counting money, which I suppose he was. Can't sleep either? I said, flipping on the light. He jumped, actually jumped, papers scattering like guilty confetti. Mom, Jesus, you scared me. I couldn't sleep and thought I'd review your insurance policies. Rebecca's been worried about your coverage. At 2 in the morning, in the dark, with a camera. How thoughtful, I said, my voice steady as granite. Would you like some warm milk? That's when I knew, really knew, that my son saw me not as his mother, but as a resource to be mined, a problem to be solved, an obstacle to be removed. But the Sunday that everything crystallized, the moment I understood the full scope of his betrayal, came during what should have been a pleasant family dinner in April. Daniel had insisted on bringing his famous pot roast, though we all knew Rebecca made it. They arrived early, Daniel immediately heading upstairs to check the guest room thermostat, Rebecca keeping me busy with aggressive small talk about her sister's renovation. 40 minutes into dinner, Daniel's phone rang. Gotta take this, work emergency, he said, leaving his briefcase open on the hallway bench as he stepped outside. I saw the corner of the document first, my name in bold letters on what looked like legal paperwork. Rising to refill the water pitcher, I glanced closer. Durable power of attorney screamed from the page, with my signature at the bottom. Except I'd never signed it. The forgery was good but not perfect. He'd made my G too loopy, my T too crossed. Behind it, more documents. Transfer deeds with blank signature lines, medical directives declaring me incompetent, bank forms granting him full access to accounts he shouldn't even know existed. A complete paper coup, waiting only for the right moment to execute. I returned to the table, poured water with hands that didn't shake. wouldn't shake, and smiled at Rebecca's story about her CrossFit class. Daniel returned, snapping his briefcase shut with the satisfied expression of a trap well set. "Everything all right at work?" I asked. "Perfect," he said, cutting into his pot roast. "Absolutely perfect." They left at 9, Daniel hugging me with the warmth of a python contemplating its next meal. I stood at my window, watching their BMW's taillights disappear, and inventoried my losses. Jewelry worth $50,000, bonds totaling $30,000, items of sentimental value beyond price, and now my freedom itself on the chopping block. That night, I made 2 decisions. First, I would let them think they were winning. Second, I would call Marcus, the nephew Daniel had banned from our family gatherings 5 years ago for exposing his embezzlement at his company. Marcus answered on the second ring at 10:47 p.m., his voice carrying the same warm timbre as his mother's. My sister Jane, who died too young, too suddenly, leaving behind a 15-year-old boy that I'd helped raise as my own. "Aunt Maggie, is everything okay?" The concern was immediate, genuine. Everything Daniel's rehearsed worry had never been. "I need a lawyer," I said simply, "and I need family, real family." The silence stretched for 3 heartbeats before he responded, "Where and when?" That's Marcus. No questions about why I was calling the nephew Daniel had spent 5 years systematically erasing from our family gatherings, the one whose name couldn't be spoken at Christmas dinner without Daniel's face turning the color of aged burgundy. The truth about their feud was simpler and uglier than the story Daniel told everyone. 5 years ago, Marcus, fresh from Columbia Law, working at his first firm, had discovered that Daniel was embezzling from his company's pension fund. Not massive amounts, just steady skimming, $2,000 here, $3,000 there, disguised as consulting fees to shell companies. Marcus had gone to Daniel first, privately, offering him the chance to return the money quietly. Daniel's response? He'd accused Marcus of planting evidence, claimed his cousin was jealous of his success, and preemptively told the family that Marcus had threatened to fabricate accusations unless Daniel loaned him money. The smear campaign was swift and brutal. By Thanksgiving, half the family believed Marcus was a desperate, vindictive failure trying to destroy poor, successful Daniel. But I knew better. I'd seen the documents Marcus showed me before Daniel's threats made him back down. For the family's sake, he'd said, though I knew it was for mine. We met at Millie's Diner, 43 miles from my house, far enough that no one from Daniel's network would spot us. Marcus had driven 2 hours from the city, arriving 15 minutes early. I saw his silver Honda through the grease-smudged window, watched him review papers while he waited, his mother's thoughtful frown creasing his forehead. "You look good, Aunt Maggie," he said, standing to hug me, and I felt the difference immediately. His embrace was real, warm, the kind that didn't calculate what it could take. "Don't lie to your aunt," I said, sliding into the cracked vinyl booth. I look like a woman whose son is trying to bury her alive. He didn't deny it, didn't offer platitudes. Instead, he pulled out a legal pad and said, "Tell me everything." Over coffee that tasted like burnt rubber and pie that was surprisingly decent, I laid out 6 months of evidence, the missing items, the forged documents, the midnight reconnaissance missions through my files. Marcus took notes in his precise handwriting, occasionally asking questions that showed he understood not just the legal implications, but the emotional carnage. "There's more," he said when I finished, his jaw tight. "I've been watching Daniel since our disagreement. He's taken out 3 loans against your house in the last year." The coffee mug slipped from my fingers, brown liquid spreading across the formica like spilled secrets. "That's impossible. The house is in my name. He's been using the power of attorney he forged. The banks didn't verify it properly." Marcus pulled out photocopies, each one another nail in the coffin of maternal trust. "He's also been draining your investment account. Small amounts, but it totals nearly $200,000. $200,000, Robert's life insurance. Money he died believing would keep me secure." "We can stop him," Marcus said, his hand covering mine. His mother's hands, I thought, elegant and strong. "But we need to be smart. If we report this now, it becomes he said, she said. Daniel's established a narrative that you're incompetent. We need to flip the script entirely. That's when he explained his plan. Document everything meticulously. Let Daniel proceed with his scheme, but safeguard the main asset, the house, before he could steal it. Transfer it to someone Daniel can't manipulate or intimidate, Marcus said. Someone with legal expertise who can protect it. We met every week for 3 months, always at Millie's, always at odd hours. Marcus built a case with the thoroughness of a prosecutor and the fury of a son defending his mother. He documented every forged signature, every fraudulent loan, every stolen item Daniel had sold through online auctions. He recorded Daniel's conversations with his fake Dr. Morrison, captured Rebecca's social media posts about their future dream home renovation. This is elder abuse, wire fraud, forgery, and conspiracy, Marcus said during our final meeting before Daniel's ambush. He's looking at 15 to 20 years if we pursue criminal charges. But that wasn't what I wanted. I wanted something more poetic than prison. Marcus slid the deed transfer across the table with tears in his eyes. Aunt Maggie, are you sure? I signed it with the steadiest hand I'd had in years. Your mother would want this, I told him. She always said you were the son I should have had. The smell hit me first. Industrial bleach mixed with boiled cabbage and the peculiar sweetness of impending death that no amount of air freshener could mask. Sunset Manor's lobby had tried for elegance with its fake marble floors and silk flowers, but underneath lurked the truth. Linoleum yellowed with age, fluorescent lights that hummed like dying insects, and a receptionist who looked at me the way you'd look at luggage being checked in for storage. Margaret Chen, room 247, she announced to a large orderly whose name tag read Derek and whose expression suggested he'd rather be anywhere else. The family says she's confused and can be combative. Combative. Daniel's parting gift, a reputation that preceded me like a warning label. Derek gripped my elbow with unnecessary firmness as we walked down a corridor lined with identical doors, each hiding another discarded parent, another inconvenient life. Through half-open doorways, I glimpsed the future Daniel had chosen for me. A woman in a wheelchair, staring at a television that wasn't on. A man calling repeatedly for someone named Louise who would never come. The sound of muffled sobbing from behind a closed bathroom door. Room 247 was 8 feet by 10 feet of purgatory painted institutional green. A single bed with rails like a child's crib. A plastic chair that looked designed for discomfort. A window facing the parking lot where I could watch families drive away after depositing their guilt. Dinner's at 5:30, Derek informed me, already backing toward the door. Don't be late or you don't eat. That first night, I lay on the thin mattress that smelled of industrial laundry soap and other people's tears, listening to my neighbor through the wall, repeatedly asking what time it was, and clutched the phone Marcus had given me. A simple flip phone, hidden in the lining of my toiletry bag. Rebecca arrived the next morning via FaceTime, though not to see me. She called Daniel's phone while he was visiting, angling the camera through my house. My former house, like a real estate agent conducting a virtual tour. The contractor says we can knock out this wall for $30,000, she said, her voice tinny through the speaker as she stood in my kitchen. But if we want the marble countertops, it's another 15. I sat in my plastic chair, hands folded like the good dementia patient I was supposed to be, while they discussed destroying the breakfast nook where Robert had proposed over scrambled eggs 48 years ago. Mom's china cabinet has to go, Rebecca continued, and I watched her fingers trail over my grandmother's crystal. But we can sell the contents first. There's some Waterford in here that could fetch decent money. The Waterford crystal Robert's mother had given us, each piece carefully selected, lovingly wrapped in tissue paper every January after the holidays. Daniel glanced at me, perhaps checking if I was listening, but I stared vacantly at the wall, where someone had scratched "Help Me" into the paint and been poorly covered with a slightly different shade of green. On day 3, Rebecca discovered my photo albums. I watched through Daniel's phone as she flipped through them dismissively. We can trash most of these, she said, pausing at my wedding photo. Though this frame is sterling silver. My wedding photo. Trash. Marcus texted me each night at exactly 9:15 after the evening medication rounds when the staff assumed everyone was sedated. Document everything, justice is coming. So I documented. I recorded Rebecca on day 4 saying, "Once we sell her junk, we'll have enough for the Cabo house." I photographed the meal they served me that night, something gray that might have been meat, floating in congealed gravy. I noted how the staff ignored my requests for my heart medication until I threatened to call my lawyer, at which point they suddenly discovered it had been misplaced. On day 6, a woman named Dorothy in room 245 died. They removed her body at 3 a.m. trying to be discreet, but I heard her daughter arrive at 8 a.m. furious that no one had called her. "She was fine yesterday," the daughter screamed, but the staff just shrugged. Dorothy had been 91, alone, and her family visited once a month. Who would investigate? Day 7 brought Rebecca's decorator, virtually touring my home while discussing cottagecore aesthetic and shiplap potential. They measured my bedroom, the room where Robert had died, holding my hand, for a home gym. On day 8, Daniel arrived with papers for me to sign. "Just medical directives," he assured me. Hidden on page 4 was a deed transfer. I signed with a shaking hand, adding a small note in the margin that only a lawyer would notice. Under duress and incapacitated. Marcus had taught me well. The sound of Robert's workshop being demolished reached me through Rebecca's Instagram story. The crack of splitting wood, the shriek of his table saw being dragged across concrete. 30 years of careful craftsmanship reduced to background noise for her cheerful narration. Day 1 of transforming this dated disaster into our dream home. She chirped at her phone camera, twirling to show the workshop where Robert had built Emma's dollhouse, Daniel's treehouse, and the oak cradle that had held both our children. "Can you believe someone actually kept all this junk? Marie Kondo would have a heart attack." Junk. The hand-carved rocking horse Robert spent 6 months perfecting, now visible in a dumpster behind Rebecca's perfectly contoured face. I watched from my prison of green walls and disinfectant, the flip phone Marcus gave me, my only window to the destruction. Rebecca had made her Instagram public, building our following for the House Flip account, so I could witness every devastating update. Tuesday, they tore out my garden, 23 years of heritage roses, the Japanese maple Robert planted for our anniversary, the herb garden I'd tended through 3 decades of seasons, all bulldozed for what Rebecca called clean slate landscaping. She posted a time-lapse video of the destruction set to upbeat pop music, hashtags including drawing fresh start and bye bye grandma garden. "Your son's quite the entrepreneur," said Marianne, the night nurse with kind eyes and a Filipino accent that reminded me of my grandmother. She'd started sitting with me during her breaks after finding me crying over my phone on day 10. "Though between you and me, his wife seems like a real piece of work." Marianne became my unexpected ally, sharing overheard conversations from their visits. "She was on the phone earlier," Marianne whispered Wednesday night, adjusting my blanket unnecessarily for any watching eyes. "Telling someone they could flip the house for $1.8 million if they staged it right. Said you'd never know the difference anyway." Thursday brought the nursery demolition. Daniel himself posted this one on Facebook, a rare social media appearance, with a caption that made my chest feel like it was caving in. "Bittersweet day, converting Mom's old hoarding room into a home office. She kept my nursery exactly as it was for 40 years. Unhealthy attachment issues according to her doctors. Sometimes loving someone means making hard choices. Caregiver life, char, dementia awareness. Hoarding room, the nursery where I'd rocked both my children, where Emma took her first steps, where Daniel, this same Daniel, had recovered from pneumonia at age 3 while I slept on the floor beside his crib for 2 weeks straight. The comments poured in. "You're such a good son." "So brave." "Your mom is lucky to have you." Lucky. I laughed so hard that Marianne rushed in, thinking I was choking. By Friday, they'd gutted the kitchen. Rebecca livestreamed the whole thing. Crowbar in manicured hand, ripping out cabinets Robert had installed himself. "These dated cabinets have got to go," she announced, yanking off a door with disturbing enthusiasm. Behind one cabinet, she found our height chart, pencil marks tracking Daniel and Emma's growth from toddlers to teenagers. "Oh my God, look at this," she laughed. "They literally wrote on the walls. Can you imagine?" She painted over it with a single brushstroke of primer. "There, fixed. 18 years of measurements, gone in seconds. Saturday, Marianne brought me intelligence that made my blood freeze. "They're meeting with a realtor Monday," she said, pretending to check my blood pressure as she whispered. "Heard them say they already have interested buyers. Cash offers. They plan to close by month's end." Month's end, 2 weeks away. "Also," Marianne added, glancing at the door, "that Rebecca was asking about expediting your transition to memory care. Said you were becoming too expensive here." Memory care, the locked ward, where they could drug me into compliance and no one would question a confused old woman's protests about stolen houses. I texted Marcus immediately. "They're accelerating, planning to sell within 2 weeks." His response came within minutes. "Perfect. Let them show their hand completely." Sunday morning, Daniel posted a photo that nearly broke me. Him and Rebecca standing in my bedroom, now painted stark white, stripped of all personality. Progress. Mom's outdated master suite is becoming our sanctuary. She's doing great at Sunset Manor. Barely remembers the old place. Blessed tester, new beginnings. Barely remembers. I remembered every board that creaked, every place the paint had worn thin from decades of fingers touching the same spots, every shadow the moon cast through those windows across 47 years of nights. I was composing a response I'd never send when my phone rang. Unknown number, but I recognized the area code, Marcus's law firm. Then came the call I'd been waiting for. Marcus's voice was professionally calm, but I heard the satisfaction underneath. "Aunt Maggie, they just got the cease and desist order. They have 48 hours to vacate your property." Daniel burst through my door at Sunset Manor like a hurricane making landfall, his face the color of raw liver, clutching legal papers that shook in his fist like captured birds. "What did you do?" he roared. And Derek the orderly immediately stepped forward, but I raised my hand, calm, steady, completely in control. "Hello, Daniel," I said, my voice clear as church bells, the confused elderly act dropping like a discarded costume. "Having trouble with your renovation?" The transformation on his face, from rage to confusion to dawning horror, was worth every minute I'd spent in this hellhole. His mouth opened and closed like a gasping fish as he processed the woman before him. Sitting straight-backed, eyes sharp as surgical instruments, not a trace of the dementia patient he'd invented. You're not," he stammered, the legal papers, the cease and desist order crumpling in his grip. Confused? Incompetent? Demented? I stood slowly, deliberately, each movement radiating the strength he'd tried to steal. "No, Daniel, I haven't been any of those things. But you've been sloppy, arrogant, and completely documented." I pulled out the flip phone, small and insignificant looking, but his face went white as printer paper when he saw it. "Every conversation recorded," I began, my voice steady as a metronome. "April 15th. You telling fake Dr. Morrison that I was showing signs of sundowner syndrome. Interesting diagnosis, considering I've never had symptoms." April 22nd. Rebecca discussing which of my jewelry pieces would sell best. My mother's pearls fetched quite a price, didn't they? May 3rd. You in my office at 2:17 a.m., photographing my financial documents. "You were awake?" His voice cracked like a teenager's. "I've been awake for every single betrayal, son." The last word dripped with enough acid to strip paint. "The forged power of attorney. Did you really think I wouldn't recognize my own signature? The loans against my house, $400,000 in total, by the way. The items you stole and sold, I have the eBay listings, Daniel. Golden Years Antiques 73, not very creative." The door burst open again. Rebecca stood there, mascara streaming down her face in black rivers, her phone clutched to her chest like armor. "The contractors are threatening to sue," she shrieked. "We gave them a $50,000 deposit. The house isn't even ours? How is the house not ours?" "Because I transferred it to Marcus 3 months ago," I said simply, watching their faces cycle through the stages of grief at breakneck speed. "Completely legal, completely binding. And Daniel, that deed transfer you had me sign with the medical directives? Take a look at page 4, bottom margin." He fumbled with his crumpled papers, found the page, squinted at my notation. His face went from white to gray. "Under duress and incapacitated," I recited from memory. Any first-year law student could tell you that invalidates the signature. But Marcus, Marcus is a bit more than a first-year student, isn't he? Marcus. Rebecca's voice pitched into hysteria. That loser cousin who tried to destroy us? The successful attorney who exposed Daniel's embezzlement 5 years ago. I corrected. The nephew who's been building a case for elder abuse, financial fraud, forgery, and conspiracy. The FBI finds white-collar crime fascinating these days, especially when it involves vulnerable seniors. Daniel sank into my plastic chair, his legs apparently no longer capable of supporting his guilt. Mom, please, don't. The word cracked like a whip. You told the neighbors I had dementia. You poisoned 40-year friendships. You threw away my wedding photos, called them trash, Rebecca. You demolished Robert's workshop, painted over your own growth chart, destroyed the garden I planted with your father's ashes mixed into the soil. Rebecca gasped. Daniel's face turned green. Oh yes, I continued, my voice gaining strength with each revelation. Your father is part of that garden you bulldozed for your clean slate. How's that for a fresh start? We can fix this, Daniel pleaded, tears now streaming down his face. Real ones this time, the tears of consequences, not manipulation. We're family, we can work this out. Family? I laughed, and even Derek the orderly flinched at the sound. Family doesn't steal. Family doesn't forge documents. Family doesn't lock their mother away to die while they count her money. But Marcus, Daniel's voice turned venomous, desperate. You gave everything to him. Security arrived then, two large men in blue uniforms, summoned by Marianne, who'd been watching from the doorway with barely concealed satisfaction. Daniel's final words before security escorted him out were, "How could you give everything to him? He's not even real family." I smiled for the first time in months. Neither are you. Not anymore. Marcus arrived at Sunset Manor at 9 a.m. sharp on a Tuesday morning, carrying a bouquet of yellow roses, my sister Jane's favorites, and a court order that made Derek the orderly step aside like he'd been struck by lightning. "Ready to go home, Aunt Maggie?" Marcus asked, but I shook my head, surprising him. "Not home," I said, zipping the small suitcase that held everything I'd brought to this place. "Somewhere better, somewhere I choose." Willowbrook Senior Living wasn't a nursing home. It was a community. Real apartments with full kitchens, garden plots for residents, a library that smelled of leather and paper instead of antiseptic. I'd researched it myself from that flip phone. Chosen it myself, paid for it myself with money Daniel hadn't managed to steal. The criminal trial starts next month, Marcus told me as we drove away from Sunset Manor, its gray walls shrinking in the rearview mirror like a bad dream fading with dawn. The DA says with the evidence we've provided, Daniel's looking at 8 to 12 years. Rebecca, probably 3 to 5 as an accomplice. Prison. My son was going to prison. I waited for the maternal anguish, the instinct to protect, but felt only the clean emptiness where love used to live. My new apartment faced east, catching morning sun through windows that actually opened. One bedroom, but mine. Truly mine. Marcus had retrieved some furniture from the house. Robert's reading chair, my grandmother's writing desk, photo albums Daniel had marked for disposal. "The house," I began, but Marcus smiled, pulling out his phone to show me pictures. "I'm restoring it," he said, swiping through images of Robert's workshop being rebuilt, the garden being replanted, the nursery returned to its original warmth. Not for sale, I thought, maybe it could be something useful. A place for families dealing with elder abuse to meet, to find resources. The Robert and Margaret Chen Center for Elder Advocacy. My husband would have loved that. Emma called that evening from Singapore, sobbing through the video connection. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I should have known. Daniel kept saying you were too confused for long calls, that visiting would upset you. I should have pushed harder." "You trusted your brother," I interrupted gently. "That's what good sisters do. The fault isn't yours, sweetheart." "Marcus sent me everything," she continued, her face puffy with 12 hours of crying. "The recordings, the evidence. God, Mom, how did Daniel become this person?" I'd wondered the same thing, searching through memories for the moment my son's heart turned to stone. Was it gradual, like erosion, or sudden, like a switch flipping? Perhaps it didn't matter. He'd chosen his path step by step, lie by lie. Sunday dinners resumed at Willowbrook, but different now. Better. Marcus brought his partner James and their adopted daughter Lily. Emma joined by video from Singapore, promising to visit soon with her husband and twin boys. Hadn't seen in 2 years. Daniel had told her I was too fragile for young children. "Grandma Maggie, why were you in that scary place?" 6-year-old Lily asked last week, her directness slicing through adult pretense. "Because sometimes people we love make bad choices," I told her, braiding her hair the way I'd once braided Emma's. "But we can make good choices to fix them." The criminal case proceeded with mechanical precision. Daniel's lawyer tried to argue emotional distress, claimed I'd been manipulative, controlling. But the evidence was overwhelming. Recorded conversations, forged documents, financial trails leading to offshore accounts. Rebecca turned state's witness to reduce her sentence, revealing details that made even the judge's face darken with disgust. "He practiced her signature for weeks," Rebecca testified, her voice flat with defeat. "Used old birthday cards to perfect it. Said she owed him for giving up his promotion to stay near her after his father died. The promotion he'd never been offered. The sacrifice that never existed. Last week, the house, my house, officially opened as the Chen Center. 20 families attended the first support meeting. I sat in the back, listening to their stories, each one a variation of mine. Trust betrayed, love weaponized, age used as an excuse for theft. You give them everything," one woman said, clutching tissues, "and they wait for you to die." But not everyone waits, I thought. Some try to speed up the process. The doorbell rang yesterday. Daniel, looking gaunt and desperate, begging for forgiveness and just a small loan. I looked at this stranger wearing my son's face and felt nothing. "I'm sorry," I said, closing the door. "I don't know you." 3 weeks after Daniel's arrest, Marcus brought me a metal box that smelled of old paper and secrets, retrieved from a safe deposit box at a bank I'd never heard of, using a key hidden inside Robert's father's chess set. "Your husband opened this account 32 years ago," Marcus explained, his lawyer's composure cracking slightly. He left very specific instructions for when it should be opened. Inside, beneath savings bonds worth more than the house itself, lay a letter in Robert's precise handwriting, dated just 6 months before his death. "My dearest Margaret, if you're reading this, then Daniel has shown his true nature, and I am not there to protect you. Forgive me for keeping this from you, but a mother's love is blind by design, and I couldn't bear to be the one to open your eyes." I sank into my chair, the letter trembling in my hands like a living thing. "I've watched our son for years." Robert's words continued, each one a small blade. The missing money from Emma's college fund he blamed on a banking error. The jewelry that vanished when he visited. The way he looks at our possessions like an appraiser, not a son. "There's something broken in him, Maggie. Something I couldn't fix and you couldn't see." Marcus sat beside me, silent, as I read about my husband's 3-year investigation into our own son. Private investigators. Hidden cameras catching Daniel photographing our financial documents during Sunday dinners. Records of small thefts dating back to his college years. "This trust contains everything that matters," the letter continued. "The bonds, the overseas accounts, the properties in Emma's name that Daniel doesn't know exist. He can take the house, Maggie, but he cannot touch your real security. Marcus knows. I told him everything during my last hospital stay, when Daniel was too busy calculating inheritance to visit. Too busy. Daniel had been at a crucial business conference during Robert's final week. I'd held my husband's hand alone as he died, making excuses for our absent son. "There's more," Marcus said gently, pointing to the final paragraph. "Let him think he's won. Let him reveal himself completely. Then let Marcus show you what justice looks like. Our nephew has been the son Daniel never was. Trust him as I did, and remember, my love, the house is just walls and wood. You are the home." The house. Robert had known Daniel would come for it, had practically gift-wrapped it as bait. "The trust is worth $4.8 million, Marcus said quietly. "Your husband was a better investor than anyone knew. He just hid it from Daniel." I laughed, actually laughed, imagining Daniel spending months scheming to steal a house worth 1.2 million while missing the real fortune hidden in plain sight in a chess set he'd walked past 1,000 times. The Chen Center for Elder Advocacy opened last month in what was once my home, transformed by Marcus's careful restoration and vision. The living room, where Daniel had spread his nursing home brochures, now hosts support groups. Robert's rebuilt workshop teaches carpentry to at-risk youth, kids who might otherwise grow up to become predators like my son. I live in the renovated guest house when I choose, though I prefer my apartment at Willowbrook. The guest house has its own entrance, a small garden where I've replanted my roses, and a studio where I've started painting again. Portraits of the families we help, their faces transformed from despair to determination. Mrs. Chen saved my life, Patricia Huang told a reporter last week. Her son had been slowly poisoning her with sleeping pills, trying to speed up his inheritance. She recognized the signs, helped me get tested, got me legal help. She's an angel. Not an angel, just a woman who learned the hard way that sometimes the ones who hurt us most share our blood. The center has helped 43 families in just 6 weeks. Marcus handles the legal work pro bono. Emma funds the renovations from Singapore, pouring her grief and guilt into something constructive. We've hired 2 full-time social workers, a forensic accountant who specializes in financial elder abuse, and a former FBI agent who teaches families how to document evidence. Daniel's old bedroom is now a consultation room where families learn their rights. Rebecca's dream kitchen feeds 50 people every Thursday at our community dinner. The nursery they demolished has been rebuilt as a children's playroom where grandchildren wait while their grandparents seek help. Every Thursday, I volunteer at the center, sharing my story with families who see the warning signs. Daniel's betrayal, intended to erase me, instead gave me a purpose I never expected at 73. The envelope arrived on a Thursday morning, prison postmark stark against the white paper. Daniel's familiar handwriting somehow smaller now, cramped, like the cell he writes from. I held it for exactly 3 seconds before writing "Return to Sender" across the front in the same steady hand that had signed away his inheritance. Some words don't deserve to be read. Some apologies come too late to matter. "Grandma Maggie, look what I painted." Lily raced across the garden, her small feet crushing mint and releasing its sharp sweetness into the morning air. She held up a watercolor, messy, joyful, honest, of the 2 of us in the garden, surrounded by impossible blue roses and a sun with a smiley face. "It's perfect," I told her, meaning it completely. This child who shares no blood with me has visited every Saturday for 6 months. Daniel visited twice a year when he thought I was dying. Marcus emerged from the main house, the Chen Center, walking with the careful dignity of someone carrying precious cargo. My latest painting, framed and ready for the center's memorial wall. It depicts Robert in his workshop, hands creating something beautiful from raw wood, but his face is turned toward the viewer with an expression of quiet warning. I call it "The Things We See Too Late." "The Washingtons want to thank you personally," Marcus said, adjusting the frame in the afternoon light. "Their daughter tried to have them declared incompetent last month. The evidence-gathering techniques you taught them saved their home. 14 families saved in 6 months. 14 Daniel-shaped holes that didn't succeed in swallowing their parents whole." Emma arrived yesterday from Singapore, her boys tumbling out of the rental car like puppies, immediately fascinated by the paint-splattered smock I wore without shame. We don't talk about Daniel anymore. He's become a ghost haunting conversations, present only in the careful way we navigate around his absence. "Are you happy, Mom?" Emma asked last night, sitting in Robert's restored workshop while her boys learned to sand wood with Marcus's patient instruction. Happy, such a simple word for such a complex feeling. "I'm free," I answered, which felt more honest. "I'm useful. I'm surrounded by people who see me, not my bank account. If that's not happiness, it's close enough." This morning I set up my easel in the garden where Daniel had bulldozed Robert's ashes, where Marcus had carefully restored every plant from photographs and memory. The roses are young but determined, their roots deep in soil that holds my husband's remains and my complicated history. Rebecca sent a letter last week. She's divorcing Daniel, cooperating fully with authorities, claims she was manipulated too. Perhaps she was. Perhaps evil is contagious, spreading from one greedy heart to another. Or perhaps she's simply better at survival than my son. The canvas in front of me slowly fills with color, not the dark browns and grays. I painted those first weeks after everything shattered, but green shoots pushing through scorched earth, the violent optimism of regeneration. They say blood is thicker than water, but I've learned that blood can also be poison. The family we choose, the ones who see our worth beyond our bank accounts, those are the ones who deserve our legacy. My name is Margaret Chen. I'm 74 years old, and this is the year I finally learned the difference between relatives and family.